I'm positive you've come across a social media post in recent years that referenced a pill, in the sense that taking it will subscribe you to a given ideology. Personally, I find this topic fascinating. The notion that there are distinct outlooks in the social media space that you can adopt and abide by, which naturally apply to general aspects of life. And likening them to taking a pill is admittedly pretty cool sounding. Although these pills might come off as mere jokes or too silly to discuss, they can definitely affect people's lives, and the younger and thereby more impressionable you are, the more likely it is that you might buy into them. So, in today's video, I'll be going over the main pills I've come across on social media, I'll dissect them, briefly poke holes in their reasoning, and perhaps we can all learn something along the way. Keep in mind, however, that I won't be diving deep into each pill, nor will I cover every single one, including niche ones like the H pill. And there's also no authority to indicate what these pills fully mean or cater to, so I'm kinda going off what I generally understand from my social media usage and online content consumption. With that being said, let us start with one of the most known pills. The blue pill.
Don't waste your life's purpose worrying about your body. This is your vessel, it's your house, it's where you live. There's no point in judging it.
I need to lose weight so that people will want to date me. You're perfectly worthy of love as you are right now. But people don't even want to consider going on a date with me at this size. Look.
This pill, and the next we're going to tackle, was initially popularized by the film The Matrix. In this film, there's a moment in which a man presents Neo, the main character, two pills. One of them, the blue one, is supposed to have him forget everything troubling but true that he's come across, which means taking it is deliberately choosing to live in a fake reality. Throughout the years, the blue pill thereby began signifying any deliberate attempt to ignore a harsh or cold truth in favor of living a lie, as it were, because it's more comfortable and demands less overall effort.
Left or right?
I think I got something better.
In the social media space, as you saw from the videos, this pill is commonly associated with broad ideologies and areas of discussion like radical liberalism, oppositions to body shaming, acceptance of different opinions, and typically the adoption of non-traditional views that usually allow for more comfort and security in your life. We could therefore frame that in the digital space, being blue pilled translates to the acceptance of mainstream progressive narratives, those focused on social inclusion, acceptance, and comfort, allowing you to live a more laid-back life free from social confrontation. For example, you might support body positivity even if it meant disregarding health concerns or the fact that a lot of people care for conventional attractiveness traits. It might mean supporting gender rights and being an LGBT advocate even if that's historically seen as taboo or problematic under some frameworks like Abrahamic religion. Or it might just mean accepting and loving yourself by denying that you're strictly flawed instead of seeking to change for the sake of others or to meet societal expectations. So, is this the correct pill to take? Well, let's analyze its abstract perspective. Is there any good reason to knowingly live a lie? This question honestly deserves its own video, but I do not think so. I believe that if you genuinely think that a perspective is a complete and utter falsehood, or perhaps you have some way to categorically confirm its falsity, you shouldn't abide by it and follow it, not even for practical means. And yes, this is a somewhat bold take philosophically. However, for most intents and purposes, this isn't actually relevant. Put yourself in Neo's shoes, for example. You're presented with opposing pills under the evident truth that you're completely aware of the situation at hand. In other words, you know that there's something to find out about, something potentially deeply problematic, and you also know the consequence of the blue pill is intentionally catering ignorance. These circumstances are simply not realistic for the average person. When a TikToker is defended being body positive, it's not likely that they're knowingly living a lie or so utterly consumed by the comfortability of their standpoint yet aware of its falsehood. Rather, they most likely actually believe what they're saying. This doesn't amount to a blue pill, at least not in the abstract sense. For perspectives to change into the Matrix-inspired pills, you have to presuppose that one of them reflects truth and the other reflects a clear lie, and by extension, that taking one would amount to living a lie and taking the other would amount to preferring cold truth over falsity. So, no, I don't think the blue pill is the right one. Its core premise almost never exists in reality, which makes the whole is it right question irrelevant to begin with, and even if that premise did exist, I'd still consider it the wrong choice. That being said, you can still take some potentially good ideas from its social media version, things like inclusiveness, acceptance, or open-mindedness, which might make it the best pill in that sense, but we still have a few contenders to examine before trying to settle that. So, the other pill, what is it? Welcome to the red pill.
Men can cry. So it's okay to be weak.
Never in human history, in any single civilization, in any single empire across the history of Earth, have men been celebrated for their weakness. Ever once. It doesn't matter.
If it weren't for reproduction, no one would give a fuck about women. Because everything you guys can do, we can do better. It's really only reproduction that makes you guys valuable. Because you guys can't fend for yourself.
In the Matrix, which as I did for blue, we can liken to the abstract meaning of the red pill, it's framed as the pill which confronts reality as it is, no sugarcoating or ignorant living. Under this view, you might hear someone saying, take the red pill on XYZ to refer to not lying yourself into a comfortable view. For instance, take the red pill on free will means accepting that you possess no free will, or accepting the red pill on religion might be accepting that God does not or cannot exist. On the other hand, from a social media perspective, as is evident by the videos I showed, being red pilled usually refers to something in regard to male-female relationships. The red pill guys are seen as macho, traditional, and brutally honest about the supposed fact that as a man, you're more or less forced to make yourself valuable by acquiring things like money, status, and strength, and not solely relying on your personality or kindness. So, is it right? Well, much like its blue counterpart, there might be some validity to some of its practical teachings, such as embracing working out, hard work, and maximizing your money making. Aligning yourself with some of these things could indeed birth a lot of goodness in your life, just like being an inclusive person in understanding of different viewpoints can also potentially be a great thing to do. However, sometimes being red-pilled goes hand in hand with outright misogyny, baseless claims, and one-dimensional views of life and man-woman dynamics. Additionally, just like with the blue pill, we can't definitively conclude that the red pill is right because the premise behind its supposed correctness is unproven and arguably impossible to prove in the first place. And beyond that, the red pill's framing almost always pushes people toward extremes. So for both reasons, its unprovable foundation and its very inevitable extremism, I don't think this pill is right either. That said, you might still see it as the best pill depending on your values. That part is virtually entirely subjective. We've discussed 2 pills now and we're seeking more, so naturally we might ask, is it possible to take 2 or more pills at once? Theoretically, sure, but you certainly can't be red-pilled and blue-pilled at the same time, as these are fundamentally contradictory. So what about something else? In the same vein of trying to dissect and understand male-female relationships, is there another pill which offers a more niche perspective on it? Is there... what's that sound? Black pill. The most straightforward pill so far. This pill isn't tied to a multitude of opinions that fall under the same umbrella, like comfortability or being traditionally masculine, nor does it harbor both an abstract definition alongside its typical social media form. Rather, it simply asserts one supposed truth: looks over everything. In other words, being good looking is the biggest driver of life success, and therefore, it follows that if you're not good looking, you're doomed, or more realistically, if you can't do anything about not being good looking. Other supporting ideas around the black pill are that pretty people get away with a lot more and can do a lot more. For example, people are attracted to them as is, and some might see their bad behavior as being less problematic. This can also be referred to as a doomer pill because the picture it paints is very black and white. You either won the genetic lottery or you're cooked, or at least you ought to go back to the drawing board somehow. Black pillars are also correlated to other terms like looks maxer, who's someone seeking to maximize their looks, maybe even through unconventional or dangerous means, all fueled by the strongly held belief that looks are supremely important. A striking example in this regard is clavicular.
I've just come to the conclusion, based on anecdotes, based on numbers, that looks are the most important metric, and it would be insane to not prioritize them.
I pointed out the possibility of taking multiple pills at once because someone who's black-pilled is also likely to be red-pilled to some extent. There is a decent amount of overlap, though there might still be disagreements. For instance, a red pillar might think men should be manly in the sense of confidence, strength, dominance, and status, whereas the black pillar might prefer a youthful or handsome face over strength or being in a particular socioeconomic class.
Making themselves look all pretty and sexy and taking pictures, pouting their lips, doing little TikTok dances and shit. This is the state of most guys, and they behave like this because they are trying to seduce women.
Like, that's a bad thing. I don't understand. That's literally your purpose. Why? Trying to seduce women.
That being said, due to the overlap, some opinions from either side either mix into each other or are simply agreed upon by both pill takers.
A lot of these women don't have fathers. A lot of the times they don't have positive masculinity. And this is what you're going to run into. But if you can find that gem in 18, 19, 20-year-old that isn't a 304, that has a strong dad, yeah, that's obviously the ideal.
Well, and I would even go as far as to say, because you just said if you're talking to a 27-year-old, whatever, I would say that women above the ages of really like 22 are utterly useless. And I'll give the reason why. Even if she...
So is this pill the right one? Are looks supremely important? Well, practically speaking, looks are important, and quite a bit too. not only since almost everyone values things like being attractive and presentable, but also because good looks naturally lead to other achievements like getting into relationships, possibly advancing your career, or generally making life easier to an extent. But claiming they're the most important relies on a clear definition of what you deem as most valuable. For example, if what you value the most is being thought to be hot, conventionally attractive, especially by a young audience of people whose interests might be more superficial or traditional, then looks are arguably your priority. But very few other metrics allow you to certainly conclude the black pill agenda. If what you value most is monetary success, being someone who's guided by truth, scoring a partner who completes you, being religiously devoted, etc., all of these do not necessarily lead to being black-pilled. At most, some of them might lead you to being blackish pilled in the sense of introducing you to a general world of self-improvement with a concentration on being attractive, but they certainly won't have you endlessly cursing your facial genetics or getting limb lengthening surgery. Rather, they might foster a perspective of understanding your physical shortcomings, pinpointing which ones you can reasonably or rationally seek to improve, then going on to do so. Therefore, partially due to a lack of logical credence, the questionable extremes of this pill, and its fairly obvious falsity under many circumstances, I'll have to abstain from calling it the right pill, though, again, it being best is left up to the reader, as that matter is relative and thereby dependent on how you ultimately see each of these pills. Anyways, notice how the perspectives we've tackled so far are pretty dark. I mean, you're either macho, living a lie, doomed to fail because you're chopped, or a walking jawline superficially succeeding. These perspectives from a macro outlook all seem shallow and somewhat depressing. An inescapable game of hollow but real pills, and which one you swallow, have already swallowed, or need to swallow will directly decide your life? What's that? Something very, very bright? White pill. You are not the result of a poker hand, and your life is not pre-over. Your life is in your hands, and you will sculpt your reality with discipline, acknowledgement, and hope. The white pill can be summed up in one word: optimism. A hopeful outlook which, although not necessarily against blue, red, or black pill, tackles the general doom and gloom perspective that might have you rotting in bed. Be it because you think women are devils, because you're not born with elite genetics, or because you think all of life is an intricate lie and any truth is too scary to confront.
I heard of a study that if you place a rat in water, it will drown in 15 minutes, but if you save it once, it will keep waiting for 60 hours.
It can also be framed as the antithesis to the black pill, a kinda love yourself or accept yourself mindset, except, unlike the blue pill self-love, it isn't rooted in denying that you're flawed, but in fully acknowledging any shortcomings yet choosing to accept yourself anyway. So, is this the correct pill? Well, it certainly is the most defensible. Asking me to declare that this pill is incorrect is kinda like asking me to say no to puppies or babies. It's a very non-controversial perspective, and a very nice one too. Therefore, due to the positive and pragmatically driven assertions that underpin it, namely that staying hopeful, ignoring fear-mongering, and staying motivated and keeping your head high are good and worthwhile practices, and also the fact that it's the last pill we're tackling for today, I'm comfortable saying that, in my opinion, although not necessarily the right one, the white pill is the best. Another thing I think it has going for it is that it can still allow for many different perspectives. It just serves as a barrier to completely dooming yourself and thinking your life is over. That being said, it still faces some problems. I can be optimistic all I want, but when does optimism turn to delusion? Such a question can only be exactly answered in a particular context, but it helps remind you that sometimes a rough reality does await you, sometimes you might indeed need to start working out, sometimes you do have to accept your perspective isn't supreme, sometimes being agnostic on an issue isn't living a lie but surrendering to intellectual humility, etc. Which brings me to the grander conclusion of this video. When do you usually need to take a pill? It's when you're sick. So I ask you, are you sick? If so, what are you sick of? Is it life? Is it your life? Whatever it is, being pilled is probably not the answer. These different ideologies have some merit, but they're more edgy social media talk than anything. Frankly, it's quite scary to condense complex human thought into a compartmentalized pill format and claim that you took one or the other. This outlook can gel with your personality, making itself part of you, and making you grow colder and more resistant to different views, much like taking a real medicine pill might make you more resistant to getting sick or catching a given disease. Well, life in broad circumstances aren't a disease. They're nothing to be afraid of. There is no authority that can confirm metaphysical truths or falsehoods, and therefore no one can genuinely tell you that you're blue-pilled or red-pilled, assuming you're not knowingly going against what you believe to be true, which itself is subjective and personal. And when it comes to these social media versions of red and blue, being traditionally masculine or being accepting of non-traditional viewpoints are not mutually exclusive, nor are they traits that can be judged in broad or absolute terms. And if you have to bone smash for a girl to like you, then she is neither worth your time, nor is your bone smashing a noble pursuit. That is to say, no pill is right. No pill is correct. Some are more reasonable than others, but it's you who ultimately decides what works best for you given where you stand epistemologically. You can also partially take on these pills, trying to concoct something which combines the best of all worlds. Call it the pill, and make it glossy and transparent, because it doesn't assume color, it simply reflects you. And with that, stay true and healthy.